Hello everyone, today I'm going to be talking about the DHCP role and how to add it. But first, let's go over and talk about what a DHCP is and what does it do. So basically what it does, a DHCP automatically sends a IP address to the client. The only way that it wouldn't be automatically sent would be through a, have it set up as a static IP address. So let's go through this process here of what it's called DORA. First, the client will send, it's called the discover process, the client will send out a broadcast to the DHCP server, and then the server will send back an offer. The server will see the broadcast and sends back an offer to the client. And then the client will request an IP from the server. Now is no longer a broadcast message, so the client sends a request back to the DHCP server. And then the server acknowledges it, and it sends an IP address that gets assigned to the client machine. So that is the process of what is called acknowledgement. So therefore, that's how the in a brief overview, that's how DHCP works. So let's go over how to run the DHCP role. One of the first things we want to do is before we add the DHCP role, we want to run ipconfig, and I'm going to be doing that on my server, and then find the subnetwork, find the subnet mask, find the gateway and DNS, and then write down the network, subnet mask, and the gateway and DNS. So let's go ahead and run ipconfig here. Let's open up the command prompt. I'll just type in cmd here, run it as administrator, type in ipconfig, and as you can see, our network is 192.168.137.0. Our subnet mask is 255.255.255.255.0. The default gateway is 192.168.137.2, and this will be my DNS server as well. This right here is 14. That will be the DNS server. So for our DNS, it'll be 192.168.137.14. So again, here's what we have. To go over a brief review of what we just wrote down is 192.168.137.0. The subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. The gateway is 192.168.137.2. And the DNS server is 192.168.137.14. So now we're going to add the DHCP role here. So first we want to go to the server manager and select add roles and features, run the wizard, and then under notifications run the post deployment configuration, enter admin credentials. Then the wizard will automatically create the security groups for you. So I'm now going to switch over to my server and show you how to do that. So as you can see here, I have the server manager already pulled up. What I'm going to do is go into add roles and features. And click next. Click next. That's role based is what you want to add there on the previous screen. It says role based or feature installation. That's the one you want to select. Select the server. We only got one server. Now if you had another DHCP server that you wanted to use a backup, you would typically have two here, but just for demonstration purposes, I just have the one. And then we're going to go ahead and select the DHCP server, and then add these DHCP server tools for the features. And click next. We don't want to add any additional features, so we'll click next. This goes over what the DHCP server does in a brief overview. I pretty much covered basically most of that already, but you can read it if you like, if it gives you more information. And then we're going to confirm it, and we're going ahead and click on restart the destination server if required. And then I'll go ahead and install it. I'm going to pause the video briefly while this continues to install. Alright, the role is successfully added. I'm going to click close. Now up here you can see that on the flag there's like a caution sign here. We need to go ahead and complete the DHCP configuration and the post deployment. We want to click next on this screen here. I'm going to use these credentials. If you had other credentials that you would need to use, we would put an alternate section. For our purposes, I'm just going to leave it here. And then say commit. Okay, so you can see it successfully added the security groups, and it authorized the DHCP server. And if we can go up here, we can see that the features and the post-deployment is finished. So we want to close out the other window here. So our role was successfully added there. I'm going to go ahead and open it up now. So now we're going to configure the DHCP role. One of the first things that we're going to have to do is add the router, which would be the same as the gateway in our purposes. But if you had another router that you would need to use, you would certainly input it in this situation. Next, we're going to add the DNS server. Since my DNS server is the same as the one that we're installing it on, it's going to be the .14. However, if you had a different DNS server, you would certainly input the DNS server in this role. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new scope for this role. And I'm going to switch over to my server and show you how to do that now. Alright, so let's go ahead and configure our DHCP server. We'll go in here and click on it. You'll see that there's server options and nothing's really set up in there. So let's go ahead and right click on server options, configure options, select the router. Our router is 192. Dot 2.168.137.2. We'll click on add, apply, and now let's go ahead and add the server. Here's the DNS servers. Now there's two ways you can resolve this. One, you can just enter the IP address directly. 137.14. Now we're going to go ahead and add this server. Go ahead and click add, and it's going to sit there and try to make sure the process is resolved. And then I'm going to show you the second way after this resolves it, how to do it by the server name. So let's go ahead and just remove this altogether. As you can see, it added it successfully. I just want to show you the other way. So in here I would look up system properties, and you would type in the PC name. Since this is a server, this is the name that you would want to use. So we would go ahead and put in layer server 3 in there, and then click resolve, and it will resolve it. Click add, and it'll resolve it just fine. Click apply. I'll close this out. As you can see, now we have the router and DNS options here. Alright, now we're going to add a new scope. We're going to set the IP address range from 192.168.137.1 through 192.168.137.254. The subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. And the exclusions that we're going to add is 192.168.137.1 through 192.168.137.15. These would be typically used for routers, switches, servers, anything other static IP addresses would be used for in your network. And we're going to just leave the lease duration as default. So I'm going to go over to my server now and show you how to do that. Now I'm going to click on the IPv4 and add a new scope. I'm going to click on next. The name of my scope will be scope 1. So we want to click next here. The start IP address is 192.168.137.1. The end IP address is 192.168.137.254. And as you can see here, 24 is actually for each bit that each one of these subnet masks are taken care of. So that's what the length stands for. If it was like 23, then it would be another different subnet mask, and you can go up to 20. 16 would be just the 255, which typically would be like a Class B network. 8 would be a Class A network, and etc. The exclusions here, I want to do 192.168.137.1 through 192.168.137.15. I want to add this. Again, this exclusion range is basically for my servers, switches, routers, and anything else that would need a static IP on the network. This range could be a lot bigger than what I have here. I'm just using this as a example. A lot of times I've seen it where it's been 100 IP addresses, or it could be a whole subnet. static IP addresses. It really just depends on the size of the company and what they're going to use it for. I'm going to leave the lease duration as the same. So as you can see, we're now at the configure options selection now in the server. Now we want to enter our router gateway. Since we already have our router and gateway already configured, I'm going to leave that one blank. I'm going to enter the DNS, which will be the parent domain, and the server name and the IP address. I showed you already how to do both of those earlier, and those are already pretty much configured for you. The Win server I'm going to go ahead and leave blank. And now I'm going to switch over to my server and show you the rest of the options here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you these. We already have these options configured, but I'm just going to run through this process on how to do this after you configure a scope. I'm not going to enter a router because I already have it entered. You can see the parent domain here, that's our parent domain. Our server is already there. We do not have a Win server. And do I want to activate the scope now? I'm going to say yes. Then I'm going to click Finish. So now the scope is now active. And as you can see, we have our address pool here. You can see our exclusion range. You can see our active range. Currently have no leases, which would make sense. And here's our DNS and router. And now you can see the DNS domain name as well. That was automatically included in there. So now we're going to activate the scope. As you can see in that wizard, it already activated the scope for us. But if it was not activated, what you would do is you would right click on the scope and you go down and click Activate Scope. I will show you that here once I get the server back up and show you how to do that process. Now I'm going to add a DNS reservation. To do this, I'm going to select a new reservation, name the reservation called DNS server. I'm going to enter the IP address that I want to enter, which will be for our DNS server. This is just for illustration purposes to show you how to do a DNS reservation or any reservation of any sorts. It would be an IP reservation for anything that you would want to have reserved. You would need to have the MAC address, and you would also need to, if needed, probably put in the get MAC command to get that MAC address, or if you already know the MAC address and there's a label on the back of the router or switch or whatever the case may be, and if you already know that, you don't have to use this command to find out what it is. I'm just using this process just to show you how to get the MAC address for our server. And I'm going to leave both radio buttons selected. Reminder, typically you will set up a backup DHCP server in a production environment in the exact same way. This is just a test domain, so to speak, and I do not need a backup DHCP server. But in a production environment, you most certainly would want to set up some sort of backup DHCP server. You would never ever want to have a DHCP server that's never backed up. Would be my best recommendation, is always have a backup domain, backup domain, backup DHCP server. So we're now on our server. I'm going to show you how to do a DNS, or an IP reservation. And the IP reservation that I'm going to do will be for my DNS server. So if this was not open, you just open up the IPv4, open up the scope, right click on reservations, click new reservation, type in, for me, my purpose is going to be DNS server. Oops. And we already know the IP address, but we don't know the MAC. So how are we going to find the MAC? So I'm going to open up a command prompt, run it as administrator, type in get MAC, and the MAC address is right there. So we would enter in our MAC address. And click on add. I'm going to leave the supported types as both. But from my experience, bootp is hardly ever used anymore. That was an old way of distributing IP addresses. Now everything pretty much runs DHCP. But for the sake of purposes here, I'm just going to leave it set to both. I'm going to close this out, and now you can see that we have our DNS server. Now we just have that IP address strictly reserved for the DNS server, and it will always get the same IP address. If this was set up dynamically, I have my server set up statically, but this is just for illustration purposes. And that was a quick way that I could show, an easy way to show you how to do that process, to do that economically. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.